Okay, we begin in Los Angeles at the 6th Democratic debate last night, a smaller, less diverse stage with 7 candidates making their bid to the American people for the last time this year. And things got heated. Take a look.
We need to restore the integrity of the presidency, of the office of the presidency.
If the president claims that he is so innocent, then why doesn't he have all the president's men testify?
Where I live, folks aren't measuring the economy by how the Dow Jones is looking, measuring the economy by how they're doing.
We've got a government that works great for those with money and doesn't work for much of anyone else.
The issue now is whether we save the planet for our children and our grandchildren.
We see among our allies and among our adversaries, case after case, where the world is making plans on what to do, ignoring the United States because we're no longer considered reliable.
Senator Warren, you would be the oldest president ever inaugurated. I'd like you to weigh in as well.
I'd also be the youngest woman ever inaugurated.
Why am I the lone candidate of color on this stage? You know what you need to donate to political campaigns? Disposable income.
All right, so I want to bring in Molly Nagel, who's right there on the ground in Los Angeles. Molly, I just want to hear your feedback. What were your biggest takeaways? What stood out to you?
Well, you talked about a lot of them in that introduction. Good morning, Kimberly. One of the biggest things that was obvious from the beginning was this was a much smaller stage than we've seen with other debates. It was 7 candidates only on this stage, and that really allowed for everyone to get into the conversation in a really fruitful way. So you saw people like Andrew Yang and Amy Klobuchar getting a little bit more talking time than they might have gotten in previous debates. And I think that time that they were allotted on the stage might really help them, especially Amy Klobuchar. When you're looking at Iowa, she could be somebody who's somewhat of a dark horse in that state. A lot of the voters I talked to really like her Midwestern sensibilities when I'm on the ground there. Another thing that you hit on there was the lack of diversity, and that was something that was really felt in the conversation. At one point, Joe Biden in the debate was asked about reparations, and he pivoted to talking about immigration. I doubt that he would have gotten away with doing that had Cory Booker been on that stage last night. So that was something that was really missing. But one of the things that I think was the biggest takeaway for everybody last night was the clash that we saw over fundraising and billionaires and wine caves, which I'm not sure that we thought we would have heard about in Democratic debates before last night. Pete Buttigieg came into this debate really with a target on his back. He's leading in Iowa, which is the state where all of these candidates are putting the majority of their resources right now. And it showed. He was really under fire, especially from Elizabeth Warren, after he opened his fundraisers recently, going after him for how he's raising the money to run his presidential campaign.
Yes, that was a big moment. And you mentioned this, Joe Biden. He is the front runner, but did things change at all last night?
You know, I think it's safe to say that this was probably Joe Biden's best debate to date. He came out of this with no gaffe, no headline about a mistake that he made during it. In fact, he had some strong moments during it. At one point, talking about unity, senior advisors to Biden told me prior to the debate that he was really going to make a hard pitch for why unity was necessary in order to lead the country. And you saw him say on that stage that he was the person who had the most reason to be upset with Republicans after they've gone after his son and his family with impeachment. But he still believes that they should work together. And perhaps maybe the most notable thing from Biden last night was not even something that happened on stage, but when former press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders went after him when he talked about how he connects with young people and people on the trail who suffer with loss and with stutters, as he did and does currently. And she attacked him a little bit for his stutter seeming to mimic it on Twitter. He called her out for it, saying it's empathy, look it up. She later apologized. So that was kind of a big moment there for Joe Biden.
Yes, indeed. And as we said, this is the last debate for this year. Molly Nagel right there in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for those updates. And guys, we're going to move to Washington. The dust far from settled 2 days after the House voted to impeach President Trump. And the House and Senate still arguing over what the upcoming trial in the Senate will look like early next year. So for more, I want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House. And Karen, Pelosi, she said that she wanted to wait and see what this was going to look like. But the president is still saying he wants this to move fast.
He wants an immediate trial, Kimberly. That's what the president wrote on Twitter last night. And that is not what Nancy Pelosi is doing right now. She's essentially threatening to hold on to the articles of impeachment until she can have a say. Democrats can have a say in what a Senate trial would look like. They're basically calling the president's bluff. Because remember, Kimberly, he has said he would like to see live witnesses. He said, sure, have Mick Mulvaney, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, people like that, senior aides here, testify in a Senate trial. Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate, does not want to do that. In fact, he is saying if Nancy Pelosi wants to hold on to these articles of impeachment, go ahead. We won't have a trial because that's not what we want to do. Kimberly, of course, the president wants to defend himself. He wants to have a full vindication in a Senate trial. He feels he did not get a chance to have his say in the House process, so he'd love to have this all out there and people defending him and saying what he did was not wrong.
Yeah, and Karen, in the meantime, I want to discuss this stunning editorial from Christianity Today. It's an evangelical magazine, and they called for Trump to be removed from office, saying he violated the Constitution and his behavior is profoundly immoral. So the president, of course, firing back at that as well.
Yeah, it did not take long for the president to jump on that editorial by the evangelical magazine Christianity Today. The president writes that the magazine is doing poorly. He called it a far left publication and also said he would not be reading it anymore. This is the first time we've heard the president ever talk about this magazine, so unclear if he's a subscriber or avid reader. This is interesting because it's a magazine founded by the late evangelical leader Billy Graham, who now, according to his son, would be embarrassed by this editorial. Franklin Graham said that his father voted for the president, would not have approved of this, but it is striking to see those words, unsavory dealings and immoral acts by the president. This is something that is very influential among evangelical voters, who the president says he has done more for than any other president.
All right. Yeah. So a little bit of tension there. Karen Travers right there at the White House with the updates. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And guys, a little bit of trouble at Kennedy Space Center today. A Starliner capsule built by Boeing went off course after a successful launch, apparently due to an engine problem. So our David Curley is in Cape Canaveral with the latest there. David, if you can just explain to us what exactly went wrong.
Well, Kimberly, this was the final test for the Starliner, a very important test to carry humans back to space from American soil. So launch was fine. The booster got it up to where it needed to be. Then the second stage, which is called a Centaur rocket, is supposed to get it into orbit. And the best example I can use is when you're making an off-ramp on off of a freeway, you want to be at the right speed and the right angle to make that turn. Well, the problem with the Centaur rocket was it didn't fire because they were listening to, or the computer was actually looking at the wrong clock. So everything was automated and everything's supposed to happen at a certain time, but looking at the wrong clock, the Centaur did not fire. It did not get this vehicle into the right orbit, and that's the problem. So they had a decision to make. Can we actually use the fuel that's on board to get up to the higher orbit and make it to the space station, which was part of the mission to dock with the International Space Station? They decided, no, we don't know if we have enough fuel. Let's protect this vehicle, the Starliner, and make sure we can get it back to Earth. So that's what they have done. It is in orbit. They are going to do some more tests, but come Sunday, it is going to return to Earth at this point and land at White Sands in New Mexico. This is an unusual capsule compared to what SpaceX is doing. It actually lands on Earth with some airbags. So that's an important part of the test. I will tell you, NASA and Boeing tried to spin this in the best positive way they could, that, you know, we had a good launch and we hope to do a good landing, but they failed in getting to the space station. That doesn't mean that they can't actually carry astronauts to the space station on their next flight, but it is in question. And of course, it is Boeing versus SpaceX as to which company will be the first to carry astronauts back to the space station.
Yeah, and David, I'm just curious, how long was NASA and Boeing preparing for this mission in general? Like, how long does it take before you actually do the launch?
Well, this has been going on for years, but this program, it's called the crew missions, that basically SpaceX and Boeing were picked out of a number of companies that wanted to actually be the contractor that worked for NASA to take astronauts to the space station. They can actually put it together another launch in a relatively short period of time, but it could be months. And SpaceX, which has already flown to the space station with its Dragon crew capsule, has one more test to do as well. It's called a pad abort test. If they pass that, then they may get the okay to go ahead and go to the space station. This is a very expensive program for the taxpayers. Nearly $7 billion. Boeing, $4.2 billion of that for what was supposed to be 2 test missions. This was the first one. They've got another test mission and then 6 other missions that they're supposed to be going to the space station. But I got to tell you, they tried to make this sound as if a lot of things went right, and some things did go right. But this is a major fail for this program and for Boeing, which has already been battered with the 737 MAX issue as well.
Absolutely. David Curley right there in Cape Canaveral with the details there. Thank you so much. And we move overseas to Moscow and that deadly shooting yesterday outside of the Russian Federal Security Service. The shooting the same day as President Vladimir Putin's annual televised news conference. 1 officer was killed and several other people were injured. And our Ian Panel is in Moscow with the latest details. Ian?
Hi, this is ABC News Live. I'm Ian Panel in Moscow, where police are now trying to establish the man and the motive behind the shooting here on Thursday night. First of all, let me identify exactly where we are. We're in central Moscow. That yellow building is lit up by the sun behind me is the headquarters of the FSB. This is Russia's internal security service. It is the successor to the notorious KGB. And that building, the Lubyanka, is notorious throughout Russia. This is an unprecedented and audacious attack. Nothing like this has ever taken place. Now, as we understand it from the police, is that this happened on Thursday evening. A lone gunman opened fire just outside, in fact, round the corner, down the block, outside the headquarters of the FSB, killing 1 FSB officer and wounding 5 others, including 1 civilian. The man was then killed by police, and of course now they're trying to establish exactly who he is. Now, there is a name now floating around Russian media. They're reporting widely who the man was, that apparently he came from a town just 30 miles outside of Moscow. The key to this investigation will be establishing the motive. Was this a lone gunman, someone who was unstable, acting alone, or was this a terrorist attack? Now, Moscow has seen terrorist attacks in the past. Russia, like Britain, like America, faces the terrorist threat on a daily basis, something security services are having to deal with. And paradoxically enough, less than half a mile down the road at the Kremlin, President Putin, at the same time when this attack was unfolding, was toasting the success of the security services. So that's what they're going to be looking at now. We don't quite have all the answers, and of course we're waiting on the FSB to give them to us, and they're not an organisation often given to sharing information widely with the public. But that's the situation as we know it at the moment. There's no suggestion there are any more people that they're looking for, or that this was part of any wider plot. But as I say, we're still waiting for more information. For ABC News Live, I'm Ian Panel in Moscow.
Yeah, tragic situation there. Thank you for those updates. And guys, the holidays, as you know, are just around the corner. No doubt the busiest time of year for travel. Exciting, but also frustrating with the weather and delays. So our Victor Oquendo is at Atlanta International Airport with a look at what you may be up against. Victor?
Kimberly, we're on the tarmac of the busiest airport in the world, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, on what is expected to be the busiest air travel day on record for the winter holidays. This flight behind me, it is about to push back. Good news for everyone on board this flight to Richmond. It is on time. About 3 million travelers expected to hit the skies. And as you take a look at the numbers, we don't expect those numbers to drop off much anytime soon. But there are some sweet spots if we're looking to avoid that big rush. The lightest travel days will be Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's Eve. TSA expects to screen about 4% more passengers this holiday season compared to last, so additional officers are in place to keep those lines moving. The average wait time over Thanksgiving was 30 minutes, and they'd like to maintain that. The advice from the TSA administrator: get to the airport early, be prepared, and just a bit patient. Here in Atlanta, they're expecting more than 250,000 passengers to make their way through this airport, and everybody here on the ground tells me they're good to go. Kimberly?
All right, Victor, we hope the weather is okay for everyone. And to get a look at the national forecast, I want to go to our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z. Ginger?
Kimberly, thank you. Let's get into that travel forecast. So important. I know today is the busiest for the whole holiday season, and so I want to bring you the airports first, right? Anybody that could end up having trouble would be like a San Francisco if you're flying through SFO. Seattle, I know I've gone through there to get to Hawaii. If you're going to Hawaii for the holidays, I'm just jealous. But along the southeast, you may see some delays, anywhere from Houston to Atlanta. Just volume alone plus rain down to Orlando could be a problem. So let's focus on some of the pictures then. Already more than a foot of snow in the Cascades. This image from Snoqualmie Pass gives you an idea of what it could do to the roads there. Definitely going to need those chains in the places that they require them as you get to the higher elevations. Tillamook County, Oregon, where a landslide already happened. So we've already had enough rain to loosen that soil and put it into the road. I think that could happen again. There are places that could get a half foot of rain with this storm through the weekend. So it's all because of this atmospheric river, right? It's this narrow band of moisture that's just pooling onto the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. That rain down to Los Angeles and Santa Barbara by Sunday. So if you have flights through LAX or say Burbank, anybody there, you'll want to just watch just for clouds and certainly that up to 1.5 inches of rain. Now, that low pressure system that's already bringing rain to South Texas will bring some more, but then it's going to really transition into more of like a Mississippi, Alabama, eventually Atlanta and northern Florida. So Sunday, if you're traveling through Atlanta, huge high volume, and then you add this rain, I do think that you might want to check ahead to some of those flights. And if you're sick of the cold that we've had the last couple days, at least east of the Rockies, no worries. It looks really mild going into next week. So not only for Hanukkah, but also through Christmas Eve and Christmas, looking pretty warm, especially from, say, Chicago south compared to average. And then I thought this was just, you know, something we could bring in. You see that in the distance? This is just a different way for Santa to show up. This family in Virginia had a real special visit by helicopter. Hasn't happened to me yet, Kimberly, but maybe it's this year.
I hope it's this year, Ginger. All right, so guys, that's no moon, you see. It's a box office hit. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker hitting theaters today, expected to be one of the top grossing films this year. It's the conclusion to the so-called Skywalker saga, which started with the original Star Wars movie back in 1977. So is the Force with this sequel, or does it belong in the bottom of the Sarlacc pit? To answer that question, I need to bring in our Star Wars super fan, Clayton Sandell. Help me, Clayton. You're my only hope. Clayton, you've seen the movie. Tell us what you think. No spoilers.
And can I just say, I can always tell when producer Josh Asher helps write an intro. Am I right?
Completely 100% correct.
All right. I'm no movie critic, Kimberly, but I did give this movie 8 out of 10 Baby Yodas. It is an absolutely fun ride. I loved it. It's a Star Wars movie through and through. Without giving away any spoilers or plot points, there are some great surprises in this movie. But I think the Oscars are going to have to give J.J. Abrams an honorary Oscar for trying to wrap up this saga that you said began in 1977, 8 movies ago. This is the 9th and final installment of the Skywalker saga. So it's not a job that I think a lot of people could have pulled off. And I think J.J. Abrams and team did it as well as anybody could expect. I think the movie's got some problems, but it does honor Star Wars. And like I said, it's a Star Wars movie through and through.
8 Baby Yodas. That's the new metric system for everything. So, Clayton, I want to ask you, how are the fans reacting online? Because the previous film, it was pretty divisive.
Yeah, so I kind of was monitoring Twitter overnight, and the reactions were largely positive. There are some people that don't love it. But here's what's really interesting. If you look at the score for the Rotten Tomatoes score for The Last Jedi, which was a very divisive movie among Star Wars fandom, you see that the critics absolutely loved it. 91% of them gave it a good score versus 43%. The audience just didn't love it. If you take a look at The Rise of Skywalker so far, now the movie has just been open last night and into today, but if you look at today, the critics really did not like this film. 58% panned it, and you can see that 86% of the audience liked it. Somebody, a friend of mine, emailed me a minute ago and said this is kind of like the difference between the Electoral College and the popular vote. Critics didn't love it, but audiences seem to be seizing on it right now. Now, on the other hand, this, of course, has kind of pitted the famously finicky Star Wars fan base against itself. There's people who are looking at this film and wondering if J.J. Abrams is sort of poking or rejecting or retconning The Last Jedi. The fact is, I would argue that most of the public doesn't care about this kind of fan squabbling, and The Rise of Skywalker is going to make $1 bajillion. That's bajillion with a B. Kimberly.
Bajillion with the B. So this saga's coming to an end, but this doesn't mean the Star Wars, series is coming to an end. There's going to be more, of course, yes?
Yeah, there will definitely be more. Now, one of the things that Disney CEO, our boss, Bob Iger, has talked about is that after releasing 5 movies in 4 years, that's a pretty rapid pace for Star Wars films. They're going to kind of pump the brakes a little bit, and we're not going to get the next Star Wars film until probably 2022, somewhere in there. So it's going to be a 3-year wait, and we don't know who's going to do that movie yet. We don't know what it's going to be about, but there will be more. In the meantime, though, we're getting some Star Wars series. Of course, on Disney Plus, we've got The Mandalorian, which is about to wrap up its first season. They're filming the second season right now. There's also a Cassian Andor series. He was played by Diego Luna in Rogue One. That'll be coming up. And then Ewan McGregor is going to be playing Obi-Wan Kenobi in another Disney Plus series. So there is more. There's lots more Star Wars coming down the line, Kimberly. We're not going to be starved for it by any means.
I love it. Clayton Sandell, our Star Wars correspondent and expert, thank you so much. I'm glad you were able to see the movie. And guys, before we go, a little bit of fun, some more fun, because we all know the news has been stressful. But what if we could just make all the drama disappear? Well, if anyone could come close to that, it's the 2 guys I sat down with yesterday. Chris Cox and Paul DeBeck are 2 members of the Broadway show The Illusionist, and let me tell you, if you didn't believe in magic before, you will now. Take a look. I gotta tell you, I'm very excited because I saw the show, okay? I saw the show. I went and saw the show.
And you still wanted us to come on.
And I wanted you to come
That's
because
amazing.
I was talking to myself throughout the entire thing. Actually, I was talking to everyone. I was like, do you guys see this? How is this possible?
Oh, you were that lady.
I was
we heard all about you. Had to be removed, right? Yeah.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
So glad you enjoyed it.
Even in front of your eyes, you just don't know how you guys are doing what you do. It's incredible.
That's where magic's at its best. There's lots of magic on TV, but as a live show, it's the greatest thing because you know you're not being tricked, but you know you're being tricked because you're at a magic show, but you can see it all happen in front of you. It's so great.
Exactly. So just so people are clear, all of you guys do different things. Like, you're the host.
That's right, yes.
But
So
you also do tricks.
Yes, I'm the trickster. That is my character name in the show. So I'm the host of the show, involved in a lot of the comedy, a lot of the audience participation in the show. I also do hand shadows in the show as well.
Amazing.
A little lost art form. And yeah, I get to introduce all these incredible other artists, Chris being one of them.
Hello.
Tell them what you do, Chris.
Yes.
I'm the mentalist, which means I'm a mind reader. So I do the mind reading and I try to make it sort of fun and exciting and silly, and by making physical connections with people, I can get into sync with them and read their minds and tell them what they're thinking of and do all sorts of nonsense.
Did you guys always want to do this when you were younger?
Yeah, I think...
Like, you grew up saying, I want to be...
I wanted to be a performer and an entertainer, and I can't sing, I can't dance, and I can't act. So
I can vouch for that. He cannot sing.
I can do none of it.
He cannot sing. There's a moment in the show where we're all waiting somewhere together, and each night before we walk onto stage waiting, there's we have a little challenge to sing a musical theatre song or a Disney song, and it's never quite in the right key.
I put my effort. I put a lot of effort in.
I might start the key, but then we just make
quite
it
in the right key.
The fact you made it to Broadway is a wonder. Really,
it is. It's an administrative error somewhere. They're going to find me out.
It's a huge feat. So you're here today. And I'm so happy because you are going to do some of your magic for us and our viewers.
Yes, we brought.
You're going to read my mind.
I sure am.
And you're going to perform one of your...
I'm going to perform a little... it's actually... Shall I show you? You want to see?
We'll start with you.
Yeah, okay. Effortless segue there. I've got here 100 Chinese yuan. Okay, but this is not a trick. This is a life hack. It's a magician's life hack. What you can do is when you get to your new city, all you do is you take your foreign currency and you fold it up once, twice, 3 times. You give it a little fold like this and a blow. What actually happens is it starts to transform like that to a genuine $100 bill. And that is a really good exchange rate as well. So
wait a second.
There you go. You can take a look. It's
I still don't know how that happened. Okay, guys, so The Illusionist is on Broadway until January 5th. The magic is real, so check it out. And guys, continue to take care of yourselves. And for all of the viewers that watch all of our shows, thank you so much for following us on our platforms. And a big shout out to the Debrief team. So guys, have an incredible holiday and a happy new year, and see you later. Thank you.